All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to our recording today. I am Caroline Steele, and I'm speaking on behalf of Olathe CTC, which is an organization that seeks to prevent underage substance usage and abuse. And today we have invited a special guest to talk to us a little bit about Teen Confidence Month, as well as a Mental Health Awareness Month. And if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Komal, and I'm an incoming senior at Olathe East High School. I'm the co-chair of the Olathe Teen Council, and I was born and raised in New York City and moved to Kansas about 4 years ago.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So the first question that I have today is related to mental health and self-confidence. And so it is, why is mental health important to you? And why is self-confidence also important?
Yeah, so mental health is often a topic that we don't discuss because of stigma around it, especially in the past years. And sometimes when someone does open up, especially in schools, you're seen as weak when in reality you're not weak at all. And so, personally, for me, growing up, my parents are immigrants. And so I grew up in a Punjabi household where you don't speak about those type of things because my parents never really have seen those things, don't know what mental health is, and don't know what they might have gone through it, but they don't know that that's the label you put on it. And so it's sometimes like it's often not a topic you discuss, especially in ethnic households or immigrant households. It's ignored. You're seen as weak, especially in immigrant households. And that's one thing that definitely got to me because my parents, when they immigrated here, they were fleeing genocide. And so obviously there's trauma associated with that and there's aftermath of that, but they don't know how to combat that. And so my brother also has gone through depression, and so when you don't know how to combat those things because you're in a household that doesn't talk about those things, it becomes difficult. So that's where my passion for mental health began. And so with self confidence, essentially, I feel like that allows an individual to just live freely without self doubt or the doubt in their mind that there's something wrong about them. And I feel like you experience more when you're confident about who you are, where you come from. And as teenagers, I feel like it shapes us into who we are as we grow up and we experience more things.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that and for being so vulnerable about your experience and your parents' experience as well. And it's important that we learn from teens like you, because how can we, sponsor a community where mental health is important and self-confidence is important, without hearing from the people that are experiencing it every single day. So thank you for your vulnerability on that question. And kind of to just shift gears a little bit. So why do you think that mental health, both good and bad, is related to substance usage and abuse in teens? And also, what about self-confidence? And so for those of you that are listening, as I mentioned earlier, like the CTC's passion and reason for the organization is to help prevent underage substance usage and abuse. And so we strongly believe that there are ties to mental health and self-confidence in substance usage. And so we kind of wanted to get her opinion on this as well.
Yeah, so within our schools, kind of to talk about the good first, it's becoming a more relevant subject. There's clubs, there's lessons, there's like spirit weeks, all dedicated to mental health awareness. And the Growing Zero Reasons Why campaign also contributes a lot to that, what we see, especially within our Olathe and Blue Valley schools. But the downside is that many of us don't know those resources or how to reach out or who to go to when we are struggling. So all the Olathe high schools have student wellness advocates and school psychologists, but more than half the student body doesn't know how to reach them, how to contact them, where they are in the building, what they do. And so when we give students a bunch of resources, but we don't tell them how to utilize them or how to access them, it doesn't really benefit them. And that kind of links to substance abuse because when we don't know how to confide in a healthy, when we don't know how to confide into someone or something that is positive, then many teens go to either vaping or smoking weed or drinking, and that's where it becomes unhealthy because you don't know how to talk to someone, or you don't know where to find someone to talk to with the things that you're going through. And so that happens like all over schools. And then also when you're surrounded by other teens that smoke and drink and vape, then you automatically think that that's what's going to help you, because in the moment it gives you instant relief and no one needs to know what you're going through, but in the long term it just affects you more and you're just keeping it in yourself, and you're essentially just struggling in silence, which is damaging and it's heartbreaking. And so I think that we have so many resources, but we don't present them in a manner where students can access them and where students can utilize them. Because, I mean, even within my school, we have lists of things in the counselor's office about things you can do and like places you can go to, and our school psychologist and our wellness advocate, but no one's gonna go into the counselor's office being like, hey, I need help. Teenagers just don't do that. And so I think, like I said, that's where the link becomes when you find something easy to access, especially within like nowadays, like weed and alcohol and vaping. That's all easily, like you can easily access all of that, especially when everyone around you is doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you touching on the fact that substances are not a healthy coping strategy and they're only a short term relief that leads to long term addiction. You know, things that aren't going to solve your internal worries with self-confidence or with mental health. And we are seeing, we agree with you, we're seeing a lot more trends in teens that are using these, you know, kind of as crutches for, you know, depression and for anxiety, instead of seeking out those professionals that can give, you know, long-term advice and healthy habits and strategies that will actually really combat the root of mental health issues and with self-confidence. So, and I also appreciate you mentioning, you know, there's kind of a gap in the link of how do we get kids to reach out to all of these awesome resources that we have, and you know what does that bridge look like? We're still kind of slowly discovering what that is with Olathe CTC, and in conversations with you all. And just speaking from your experience, do you have any suggestions about how we can bridge that gap between the amazing resources we have, but then students not wanting to be the ones to reach out and say, I need help?
When we get those wellness advocates and when we get those school psychologists, they're stuck in the corner. Their offices are literally in the corner where no one goes. And that's how it is with like different Olathe high schools too that I've talked to students from. When they're in a hallway that no one goes to, you're not going to know what goes on there. So to combat that, in my school, we worked with the Johnson County Mental Health Center and we painted a whole mural in that hallway that attracts, so it'll attract students. But we got a grant for that within our club, and like not every school has the opportunity to do that. And so essentially we need to put those resources in like a way where students can easily, they don't have to go out of their way to reach out to them, because students aren't going to do that. They're not going to go to the counselor's office and be like, hey, I need help, give me resources. They're not going to do that. If the resource comes to them, it's kind of how they will use it. And so one thing that I saw that really helps students is when you have students talking to other students. When you talk to an adult that's not a professional about what you're going through, sometimes they're not going to understand what's happening, or they're going to think you're overreacting, or you just feel more comfortable talking to someone your age who is essentially living in the same world as you are, because as adults we're in a different generation with different things going on. And I know with the rise of like technology and social media, and you're talking about self-confidence, that like destroys some people's self-confidence when you're seeing on social media people living their perfect lives, and you only see the good in our life. You don't see the reality, and that essentially can like contribute to a student or my peers like mental health. With social media, we obviously can't take that away, but I think that we, like as adults and as advocates for our community, I think we just need to find ways where students know, I mean, many students don't even know those resources are available to them. So first, let students know that those resources are available. Um, and then second, we need to find ways where we can not essentially be like, hey, this resources is here for you, go ahead and use it, but present them in a way that's like it's there if you want to use it. Because when you put them in the counselor's office, no one's going to go there. We go there to do schedule changes or get something fixed, you know? And so like whether it's like posting things in the hallway, because we look at that, or posting things on like our school social media, we look at that. And so it's just finding unique ways to attract students.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially I appreciate the mention on the social media aspect as well, how that has contributed to the issues that we're seeing with mental health and self-confidence in teens, and how important it is that we um, instill this idea that, excuse me, social media is simply just a highlight reel. And we're only seeing, the bests of what people are putting out there. We're not seeing the full story. And we're also seeing that social media is contributing to more substance abuse in teens as well. And so it's all kind of just this cycle connected to self-confidence, mental health, substance abuse, and, social media. And it's this cycle that we all need to work together to fix and to break at the same time. And I liked your mention on how, finding creative ways to make these accessible to students. So I love that you guys put a mural up that attracts people's attention down that hallway. And I went to Olathe Northwest, and we're in the same situation where these awesome resources are kind of just packed away in a part of the school where nobody goes to. And so that's a great way to make it, more accessible. And then utilizing social media in a positive way, showing that there are these resources that people can access. But my number one favorite that you mentioned is this peer-to-peer connection and interaction. And Olathe CTC is looking to work more closely with youth. And I think that something that we could do is, sponsor things that Sources of Strength, for instance, puts on that trains youth on, mental health and how you help somebody that's struggling and how you get them connected to resources. And so CTC really is looking to kind of do, more of that youth aspect and plug in there. And I think that, our Olathe community can be looking at ways to do that too. How do we teach our kids, our students, and our younger peers that it's important to check in on your other peers, your fellow peers, and what can you do when someone is struggling, and how you get them help that they need.
I think one last thing that I want to add that I was talking about with a teacher the other day is like we have 5 high schools in Olathe, and so we have Northwest, East, Northwest, and then South. But one thing that we've been seeing a lot is in certain areas of Olathe, students tend to call like that school like, oh, they're from the ghetto, or like, oh, those are the rich kids, or like, oh, this and that. And when you put that label on a certain area, they are attracted to act a certain way. Um, and so I grew up in Queens, and we literally lived next to a gang. And so I know what that looks like, and Olathe is nothing like that at all whatsoever. And so when students put those labels on other schools, that those students from this school live in the ghetto, or students from this school are this way, that makes those students act that way to like kind of fit that label, whether it's a positive or negative label. And so I think that's also a really big thing that kind of links to substance abuse within Olathe. It's even in other parts of Kansas and the KC metro area, of how like we see different labels being made on different schools, and like how that kind of links to substance abuse. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're given a role and you're given a label, feel in some sort of way that you have to fulfill that. And I think that that's something that Olathe CCC hasn't really examined or looked at. And I appreciate that mention because things are constantly changing, and this is something that I personally haven't heard before. But I think that it is a very valid point. And I appreciate you bringing that up for sure. And I think that you kind of already covered the third question, about what can our community do to foster good mental health and confidence in teens. But I'm going to kind of shift to the next question with that is, do you think that, doing all of these things, promoting better mental health and getting people access to these resources and teaching peers about how to connect with your peers in a positive way and get them help that they need, do you think that all of those things would help prevent underage substance usage?
Definitely. I think that from when I first came here to now, we've been seeing like students actually confiding to healthier things. You know, when schools constantly talk about mental health, whether it be over the announcements or I know my school did like a spirit week dedicated to mental health or whatever it is, when they constantly talk about mental health and ways you can actually combat your struggles, students can like actually do them because no one really wants to go to substances. Like deep down, no one wants to do that. But when you can't find anything else that works for you, that's what you're gonna do. And so I think doing all these things is going to help. I don't think there's anything like what we've mentioned that's not going to help. I think one other thing is that as a community, we've done really good at showing like high schoolers and the younger generation that they do matter. And I think Olathe does a really good job at that. Especially since we're a really small community, it's really easy to show youth that they do matter, their voice matters, and what they're going through matters. And so I think just essentially that when you know your leaders are working for you, I think that makes a big difference. But overall, I think whatever we do to help is going to help, whether it's just one student or the whole class. I think it makes an impact in someone's life, and I think that's what matters.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for that insight and for closing us out in the perfect way. There's not anything else I can add to that that would supplement what you just said. But I just did want to ask you, do you have any other closing remarks, or did you feel like you were able to kind of put out everything that you wanted to say about these subjects?
I think I was mostly able to put out everything. Just one last thing, students like should know about like the resources that are available. So just to like list some of those off. There's a Johnson County Mental Health Center hotline. There's a National Suicide Hotline. Every single like the school does have wellness advocates and psychologists, and almost half of the Olathe high schools are getting sources of strength. And I know all of the Olathe high schools do have mental health awareness clubs. So if you want to get involved in those are some things off the top of my head that if you're looking for anything, those are some of the resources.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of add on to that as well, at www.olathectc.com, we have a whole page of resources that are local, national, and all of that, as well as hotlines. And they're, related to things such as mental health and self-confidence. So please utilize those if you need those. And we also just wanted to let you know, that we're always here to help you if you need it. And so you can reach out to I think it's ctcolathe@gmail.com with any questions that you have, regarding this discussion. If you wanted to hear more about, what Komal or I have to say about this, or if you just need further clarification or help or guidance, please reach out to that email and we'd be happy to connect you with whatever else that you might need related to this. So thank you so much for being here again today. We really appreciate your input and your insight. And on behalf of Olathe CTC, thank you so much for watching this video, and we appreciate you guys being here. And thank you for helping us create a safe and healthy community for all. Bye.
Thank you. I appreciate it.